Trigger warning. Transphobia, profanity, drama, sexism, domestic abuse, Nazis, incels, cancel culture, and gaslighting. Intro. Okay, if you haven't watched the previous video I made on this topic, here it is in the link in the description below. Go watch it. Up to speed now? Good. Okay, before we get to that, there's a side controversy I'd like to speak about vaush versus Rowling. Part 1. Clash of the Titans. If you don't know who vaush is, he's a YouTuber and liberal debater. He's got a big platform, but he's nowhere near as big as JK Rowling. Anyways, on International Women's Day, he said all JK Rowling had to do was shut the fuck up and she could have been almost uncritically beloved for like a century. Okay, I absolutely agree with that, because when you're retconning your franchise to retroactively add diversity and telling your audience that wizards used to shit and piss on the floor like untamed animals before magically cleaning up the evidence, you need to stop. No, I'm not bemoaning an increase in diversity in later years. In fact, I'd argue that with diversity, the more the merrier. And if you decide to whine about diversity in the work I create, I'll add in more diverse characters just to spite you. If Rowling gave Harry Potter to the fans and never started a transphobic downward spiral, people would not be criticizing and condemning her. Next, vaush tweeted, "Women be quieter and start apologizing" challenge, which has been criticized as misogynistic. If you don't think that trans women are women, that's fine, because nobody can read minds. Think whatever demented shit you want. However, as soon as you say it or act on it, then it becomes okay for people to scrutinize and criticize it. If you say trans women aren't women, or that trans men aren't men, or that there's only two genders, then I'll take issue with that. Especially when the whole world's listening to you. Plus, if you say something problematic, instead of doubling down on it, make up for it. Now there's a can of worms that's Rowling's response to it. What you and your ilk fail to recognize is how tediously familiar I find your tactics. I had a violent ex-husband who used to tell me that life would be great if only I'd comply, but you're making the same mistake I did. Women like me can't be bullied out of existence. Yes, Rowling, we do believe you when you say this, and your traumas may explain why you're this way, but they don't excuse what you do. You left him decades ago and he was a cis man, so why are you taking it out on trans women who have nothing to do with your traumas and using what happened to you a long time ago as a get out of jail free card? What you fail to recognize, Rowling, is that vaush isn't as famous and powerful as you. You've went from victim to aggressor, and we will have to treat you as aggressor until you stop being the aggressor. As for why vaush said those things, it's because he wants to divert Rowling and her cronies' attention onto him, so they have less time to chase trans people off of Twitter. He said something inflammatory to bite the bullet and protect vulnerable trans women for the time being, and went out of his way to say that Rowling, TERFs, and the rightist supporters don't care about fighting oppression. They want to oppress. It was better him, someone who's made a living off of debating others and has a cult following, than some nobody who would get deplatformed just for existing. I'm not defending the act of making sexist jokes, nor am I defending Rowling. What I am saying is that while vaush's words were obscene, they're directed at someone with a much longer history of being obscene. And while vaush is jokingly obscene, and isn't someone who believes everything he says, Rowling believes every lie she tells about trans women. Part 2. Here's how my video's going. Okay, as of the writing of this script, it's got 45 views and 3 likes. As a dislike button was removed, I can't tell how many dislikes there are, but one good thing is that not knowing how much people have disliked it really protects my faith in humanity. As much as we miss the dislike button, there's still silver linings to every dark cloud. Part 3. The comment section. So, you want to know about my comment section, right? Well, I had to remove some, but to start on positive note, here's a comment I kept from Renegade3211. Nice video, subbed. Keep it up, never stop doing what makes you happy. Rowling is sus and not a feminist. Aw, thanks. and I agree with Renegade here, because when you look back, you can see that Harry Potter was progressive in the 90s, but especially now, all the problems have become obvious. Renegade has no videos, but I've decided to subscribe to them. Okay, this section is dedicated to Renegade. If you're not Renegade, skip to part 4. If you are Renegade, I want to see what YouTube videos you can make, and I've subscribed to you, so I will know when you create. Being an underdog to myself, I'm biased towards the underdog. Part 4, the TERFs come in. Next, the transphobes decide to come in and try to subvert my video's message by spewing their bile. Okay, I do believe in free speech, but only to an extent. I believe heavily in Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance, and that absolute tolerance would require tolerating the intolerant, and enabling the intolerant to gain power, eradicate tolerance. For the tolerance to remain in place, there must be some intolerance, the refusal to tolerate the intolerant. One person who doesn't understand this is Keith's universe. As much as he is a liberal and believes in many of the things I believe in, I don't accept that everyone must be tolerated, even bigots rule. Because he refused to chase bigots off of his comment section and is naive enough to believe that they wanted genuine discourse, they've infested and took over his comment sections, where the positive messages of his videos are drowned out in the sea of hateful e-core, and anyone who dares criticize gets ganged up upon and turned into a scapegoat for all the vice that the hateful Nazis refuse to hold themselves accountable for, and would rather accuse their critics of having. And yes, the most common ones are TERFs and man-hating feminists, and their behavior is utterly vile, cowardly, and arrogant. I thought that man-hating feminists were bogeyman fabricated misogynists to make impressionable men and boys think that they're the victims of oppression instead of favorites of society. These quote-unquote feminists' behavior towards a man trying to add into a feminist discourse is exactly like how incel gamers react to a woman trying to enjoy playing and making video games. I'm not saying all gamers are incels, nor am I saying all feminists hate men. In fact, I consider people who insist that men should be excluded from feminism just as sexist as women hate men. And as feminism is a push towards true equality among all walks of life, anybody who thinks that the person's merit is determined by the gender they identify with or the sex they were assigned at birth should be excluded from feminism. Thus, every hateful attack at the man by these self-proclaimed feminists is based solely on its existence as ammo for misogynists to convince people that women are the real oppressors. If men are gatekept out of feminism, how can they learn anything about it and find out that it's not the threat and that the patriarchy is the enemy of all humans? That's why I delete comments that are inherently toxic and hateful, and are made in bad faith. Because I want genuine discourse, not an echo chamber. Relating back to vaush, you end up inadvertently giving ammo to Rowling. Dear fellow feminists, don't give bigots ammo ever. Okay, now on to the comments that I got from TERFs. The first one from DJ Boggs read, J.K. Rowling is right. It's support for her using International Women's Day and feminism in general as a platform to attack trans women from, instead of contribute to feminism. These haters, whatever you do, don't harass them. I've got it all under control. DJ Boggs just typed that one comment so I can give them the benefit of a doubt and hope that they learn better than to support the public face of a TERF movement. The other transphobe who got their comments removed was Stephen Hogg. They've made 4 comments. It's around then when you post 4 comments on the same topic on the same video such post in rapid fire on your position that they tend to start to have an issue with you, especially with what you say. First, I'm assuming with that name that Stephen Hogg is indeed a he, said, there's no transphobia in any of JKR's tweets. Identify a single statement that is derogatory or pejorative about trans people. Another crazy Rowling defender. Okay, I refused for him because there's no point giving evidence to the contrary to an opinionated bigot because he's already reached his conclusion and nothing can get him to acknowledge the truth. There are 2 years worth of transphobic content in Rowling's tweets, in fact more than 2 years, and when you can't see it, you either have no understanding of a topic and the dog whistles, or you refuse to address the elephant in the room because you like it too much to consider it being a problem. There's a lot of videos on Rowling's tweets and break it down why about it. Next, Stephen said, "You don't support me when I deny you your rights. That must be because you're a bigot." Okay, what he's saying is that people who speak out when their rights are being taken away are the real bigots, which is a massively problematic thing to say. It is nothing more than a silencing tactic, because if you believe that any marginalized community and their allies who speak out against their oppression are just as bad, if not worse than their oppressors, then you are on the wrong side of history. End of story. The third comment was after I deleted their comments and it got auto-deleted, so I can't see it in full, but I read, "Oh no, I'm part of a problem! The horror! If you're not with us, you're against us. If you don't join the witch hunt, then you're a witch. What I see is your rights crossing with..." I don't know what the next part is, but I'm sure it reads, "My right to attack a vulnerable community." I then blocked Stephen, just as I wrote the script, and seeing who he subscribed to, I could tell that he's a conservative fan of Rowling. And I do tell you, conservatives and turfs tend to work together a lot because they both hate trans people, see women as walking vaginas, and are basically one and the same. Yes, Stephen, you are part of a problem. I'm not saying anything as black and white as you'd like to think. You're just painting me as a crazy fanatic. With a witch hunt of cancel culture, I do believe that they go into draconian extremes to vilify people for the sake of the sadistic pleasure one gets from condemning someone for a real or perceived wrongdoing. While I do believe that powerful people use their massive influential platforms to harm those far less fortunate than them should be held accountable, such as Rowling, we need to be reasonable about it. If we let our feelings of hurt from her betrayal consume us, we demoralize ourselves and sink to her level. If we treat her as a human being that needs to be held accountable for wrongdoings, then that's the only way forward. Not by condemning her and reducing her to a one-dimensional monster to be slain, or idolizing her as an infallible goddess who is above criticism. The next thing to come out of Stephen's stupid mouth was, "Who's trampling over trans rights? No one." That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm parodying the attitude I see in the trans activists. Okay. Stephen is assigned a stereotype to trans activists that paint them as fanatical moral absolutists who can't comprehend nuance and are up in arms over literally nothing. For the most part, trans activists are willing to see nuance, and it's the transphobes who, ironically enough, refuse to have a nuanced conversation. Plus, I cannot stress how cowardly it is to say immediately right after you say something harmful but you're not saying it. You are not fooling anybody with a working brain. And it's super cruel to deny that somebody's being oppressed in the first place. If you try to erase another person's experiences, you should shut the everlasting fuck up. Because denying a person's experience is a form of gaslighting. It is an attack on their psyche and reality, and is thus inherently cruel. It also works to dehumanize a person who's a target of a denial and enable the perpetrators by saying, "Hey, this never really happened, so it's okay to continue doing so." When you willfully deny that the person was hurt, you enable their abusers and pour hot acid into their wounds. When you refuse to believe that there's a problem, you become part of a problem. Stephen is a transphobe and wants to hurt trans people as well as enable other transphobes. That's why he needed to be blocked. Conclusion. That concludes my follow-up video on Rowling's tweets. What do you think? Please like and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and try to keep this discussion civil. Tyson, out.